So I am here with Laure Jackson, my first regular guest here on the Get You Home show, which is super exciting. And I've been looking forward to this for ages. So hello, Anne. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Hello.
Right. So I have been very badly trying to say what it is that you are, what it is that you do. I say, well, she does sensory stuff if you've got sensory issues, and she's an occupational therapist. But can you just help me perhaps understand what is an OT? What does that stand for? What is it that you stand for? What is it that you do? And how do we define sensory issues? What is that referring to?
Yeah, no, brilliant start. Thank you. Yeah, so an occupational therapist is someone who helps folk do the job of living, literally. So, I mean, it's wide, it is vast. There are loads of areas that we can go into. The one area that I wanted to go into to help people do what they want to do in life is understanding how we process senses that underpins everything. It underpins how calm we are, how we feel about life, how coordinated we are, how anxious we are. It affects mental health, physical health. Obviously, I'm a big sensory health proponent. That's who I am as a sensory health coach. But it's helping people understand the value of looking really simply at how we're made and how we process those senses, and therefore how it has a knock-on effect on function, on participating in life, in doing the things that we want to do, which is the job of living. Whether it be for a child, your job is to play, or if you're at school, it's how you learn. If you're working, or if you're a family member or a dad or a mum, it's what do you need to be able to do to function and do that role well? And senses can impact those roles quite significantly.
Okay, so how would we most easily be able to understand that there is an issue with somebody around the whole sensory stuff? What are the most likely things that perhaps are going to present themselves? We're going to think, okay, this is possibly sensory. How are we going to be sort of know that that's an issue?
Yeah, I think first it's actually quite good to look and acknowledge that there are different types of sensory issues. So the classic one, the one that folks often know about, are those, if we look at them, the five main senses, they're really bothered by sounds. They need the ear defenders on, hands are over the ears, smells are too much, it makes them sick, or they just avoid places. They wear sunglasses if they're inside because it's too bright. So basically things like it's too bright, it's too noisy, it's too smelly, people are coming too, it's too busy, people are touching me, I don't want them touched, I don't like the seams in my socks, I hate wearing certain textures, I won't wear, some people don't wear underwear, there's just certain things, different people have different ways of presenting. If they are overreactive, that's one type of sensory processing issue. You've got another type where folks are really quite uncoordinated and that they bump into doorways, they bump into you if you're walking down the street, they'll drop things, they're really clumsy. And it's nobody's fault, as it were. Nobody's doing any of this stuff intentionally. It's just at this subconscious, automatic level of the way that the brain is processing information that it gets from the environment. So you have those who are overreactive, who are, it's all too much. Those who don't get enough from life and it's all a bit dull and they're hard to engage. There are those who are the kind of clumsy ones. And there's a middle ground as well of other people who have difficulty discriminating and picking out the details and things. And they might struggle with schoolwork, with which way round does the P and the B go and the D. And so there's little types of discrimination that can impact people as well. So hard to answer, perhaps in one easy way, but because there's just different types of sensory processing, but we can help all of them, which is nice.
Fantastic. And I guess, and of course, that there's going to be, we all are going to have sensory issues at some point. If we are tired, then we may have an issue that wouldn't ordinarily be a problem for us.
Yeah.
But if we're tired, then we are less able to cope. So I'm guessing that you've got, all of us are going to be affected by this, but also there's new things that are going to come and go. But I suppose really, I'm trying to understand this for my own sake, really. But you're there to help people when it's not just that one day when you're tired and it's not a great day. This is more life impactive stuff. Would that be accurate?
It is. And that's where it's been really interesting because there's a term called sensory processing disorder. Now, it's not an actual official diagnosis out there, although it's one that we often use because the disorder part of it means that it gets in the way of life. I often prefer to call them about sensory processing differences. Also, because of being much more the sensory health coach, it's about how each and every one of us in our work life, in our family life, in our church life, wherever we happen to be, that we can function well and we can be part of a community and we can feel loved and we can give love, we can give and receive well without getting disorganized, without getting dysregulated, without having meltdowns, without getting aggressive. Sensory processing impacts all the negative aspects of our being. So I want everybody to live in the best sensory health possible. Some will just have sensory differences, which, as you say, like tiredness, sickness, anxiety and stress helps raise arousal levels. So it's harder for people to process sensory information. So yeah, tiredness, stress, all of those things can make sensory processing issues worse. But then you do have those who it does impact, which would be more the ones that would be down the disorder type route that may have other diagnoses along with it, or might just have sensory processing issues on a more significant basis.
And I guess one of the problems, of course, is that it's not necessarily going to be a visual thing for us to see. Someone's got a crutch, they've got a broken leg, right? They've got something, we can be sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
But it may not be as obvious to see someone who's struggling with sensory issues. So I'm guessing you've got help for those sorts of situations as well.
Yeah, it's essentially, it's having, I mean, on the website, you know, there's downloads to try and understand, because we look for clusters of behavior. Because just because you're a picky eater doesn't necessarily mean that you've got sensory issues. But actually, if you're a picky eater and we know that you're bothered by the seams in your socks and you're bothered by textures, and actually you don't like your hair getting cut, or you don't like your teeth being brushed because of the feel, all of this is due to their tactile system. So those little clusters of information come together to make me think, oh, right, we really need to treat the skin system, the tactile system, and that is what is impacting the picky eating. So we have to do an assessment, and that's a big part of what I do, to try and assess everybody's sensory thumbprint. That's a word that I've developed, that I use, because I think it really makes sense of who we are, who we designed to be, uniquely us. Nobody else has our thumbprint and nobody else has our sensory thumbprint. So it's about that assessment process of looking through all of these areas and finding out which bits connect to that person, which connect enough to make a cluster in order for us to then think, yeah, let's treat this, or let's learn how to manage it from a sensory perspective, rather than thinking that, oh, somebody's badly behaved, or they've just got anger issues, or any other thing that we can think of and just throw at them. It's like, no, there's a reason behind this, and let's see if it has a sensory base.
Okay, well, you just used two words which I understand. So treatment and management.
Okay.
That I can understand that. I've known people who need to be treated for a condition. I was treated for potentially a heart condition. So I understand the idea of the treatment. And then you've got the management is, okay, so you've got this condition. How are we going to learn to manage that moving forwards with or without the treatment? So in my own case with the heart, I had medication because they thought I might have a heart issue. That medication was then withdrawn. I don't have that issue. But here are some things you can do to manage, to make sure that you don't have to go back to that treatment potential. So I'm guessing that's another part of what you're doing, isn't it? It's trying to work out the treatment against the management, and you know, how do we get those two together?
Yeah, big time. Because that's one of the things that there's a lot of this called sensory training out there, which is fine. It's all great, but it doesn't address the individual person. There isn't often the capacity to actually do the treatment part of it. And it jumps straight to management, whether that's children's schools or anywhere else. So it's just like, that's why I was really inspired to set up something different that would actually look at all of those things and help people really assess. Because people often say, oh, I need an OT assessment. Do you do that? And it's just like, yeah, that's part of my sensory super system. We take 2 to 3 months to really assess, find out what the sensory thumbprint is of the individual that you know, that you love, that you work with. Then we treat what we can, and then it's about management. And that's why it's a fairly long term thing, because I don't it was lovely, actually. Just one of the mums this week says, what you offer is really sustainable. It's not a quick fix. And we're thinking, well, yeah, because we are humans. This isn't a quick fix situation. It's not even really, it's not about fixing someone. It's about honouring who they are, making life a bit easier when it's a real struggle, and then helping them manage and cope to the best that they can within that.
I love that idea of honouring the person of who they are. Rather than saying you need to fit in this box over here, you're saying, right, let's work with you as an individual. I love that. That's really amazing. Right. We're going to take a break with a piece of music. We'll come back and then we'll get into more of the specifics of what is it you actually do? How can you help people? And why have we got this slot on the Get Your Home show? What is it that you can provide to help people with living the best lives they can? So we'll be back in a minute. So we are back with Laure Jackson talking about sensory issues, how you can live the best life that you can live, how that Anne can help you with all that. And that's the whole point of this piece on the Get Your Home show, is looking at sensory issues. And I love how Anne is talking about treatment and management and how that can work together. And for me personally, the long-term solutions, not just trying to fix a problem, but actually working with longer term with people, which is really exciting. So, Anne, what is it that you actually provide? I know of you for different reasons, but CHOTS is one of those things, acronyms in my mind, and I know that's changing. So what is it that you actually do? How can people get in touch with us here? I mean, they can email me, they can WhatsApp me in the station, we can pass those messages on, those questions. But what is it that that you could offer through effectively very, very short term question and answer session here on the radio?
Yeah, well, I'd love to be able to answer any questions that anybody has. The main website, annelaurejackson.com, is a place it kind of gathers people, because I have different branches to what I do. There is the Christian sensory support, which is, used to be CHOTS, Christian occupational therapy support, where there was a sensory healthy church program to help churches understand and train and get equipped and understand much more about sensory issues and how we can include and integrate people into lives of faith and fellowship and community. And then we have another website, Sensory Processing, which is very much more for people who are not really interested in the faith aspect of things, but they really want answers to their sensory issues. And then I have a local service, because I'm based over in the Channel Islands. I'm based over in Jersey. So I have a Jersey branch to what I do as well. But what ultimately it's about, giving information. Those courses, I have recorded courses online that are there for folks to access, learn from on demand whenever they want to. I'm here for people once a week to be able to chat to. There is a system that folks work through. So it is this sensory super system that we, on average, takes a year. And we want folk to be able to learn how to embed sensory thinking into their everyday life. So that's why it's not just, don't come for a course, or don't just come for a week and we'll train and equip you that way. It's like, we need to walk the walk with you. We need to walk the journey with you, so that every circumstance that you come across in your daily life, you can bring it back to us. You can bring it back to me on a coaching session, and we can then apply the sensory thinking, the sensory treatment, the sensory management strategies to that situation, so that over time, folks get more and more equipped and empowered to handle it for themselves. And then when they feel secure in what they're doing and how they're handling their family, their students, whoever, it's at that point that they then choose to leave the service. So it's completely different to when I was working in the NHS and folks came in and we had a treatment block, all good, but I wanted more. I wanted to be able to offer that more for people. So it is a system that they literally tick off whenever they've worked through the next stage. Because for some people will really want to apply themselves and really look and go really fast and watch all the videos, consume all the information, do the assessment, start moving on to treating and managing. And others, you've got to look after your granny and somebody's out at work full time and then somebody else has got sick. And so you have to go through the pace of the system of which suits your life. And I want my service to fit in with people's lives. They need to commit to it, but only with what they can actually afford to commit to in their time and energy and effort. So, and then they just work their way through the system. And that's why it's called a super system, a sensory super system, because it's that, clear a pathway to work through the assessment, treatment and management of those needs.
Brilliant. One of the things I know you have been offering, which I wanted to explore just a little bit today, you offer help to churches in terms of how they can be more considerate of people in there who want to come into their buildings who might have sensory struggles of whatever nature. Do you want to talk a bit about that? What is it that you're actually offering? How can churches benefit from your expertise, your knowledge, your guidance?
Yeah, an online program is what has been created at the moment. We are looking to create a booklet. Maybe there's a short course. But for now, there's 3 hours of information online. It's all free. If you go to christiansensorysupport.com and then you can see church, the Sensory Healthy Church program is there. So I've explained, we went through last year, we did a survey across the world through social media asking what folks were struggling with church. And we came away, 61% of people who answered the survey said that they avoided church because it's just too hard. Physically, emotionally, sensory-wise, it's just stress, anxiety, getting the kids out the door. For adults, it's just too overwhelming. Loads and loads of things. So the first hour is really of that course, the Sensory Healthy Church program, is looking and feeding back that information so that folks know where I'm coming from. And then the second hour is that we break down the 7/8 senses that we concentrate on. There are loads of senses, but those are our main ones. And they're the ones when we talk about sensory integration therapy, they're the ones that we actually try and treat. So I break it down and say, okay, so if folks have got a problem in the auditory system with what they hear, what does it look like? And what can you do in your churches? Both from an environmental perspective and also for the individual themselves or for the family. And then it's like, for those who have an issue in their vestibular proprioceptive system, which is probably a new word for most folk.
It is for me.
Okay, that's basically, they're on the go. They're the fidgety ones. They're the kind of like, oh my word, will you just sit still? But no, it's a physical thing that they have to do this. But there are strategies that we can do so that they don't have to feel absolutely awful in church because they are literally trying to hold themselves together by sitting still, or if it's parents who are needing to oversee their children, that's what's just so stressful. And I think church does not become a pleasant environment because they think they have to behave a certain way. But if we can give them other tools to help and allow them some movement without disturbing and distracting others, it's happy days. It doesn't take much, but it does take an awareness of sensory processing to make those tweaks and those changes. And then the final hour, actually thinking about it, if it is split into 3, it's very much then the kind of language. We've got children who are quite demand avoidant. So if you ask them to do something, they'll kind of run the other way, but it's not the typical disobedience. It's not that parenting style that might need that approach. You need to deal with some of these children. You need to communicate with them in a way that is very different to typical children. So the last hour is much more about how you put those strategies into practice. So it is split into three areas quite nicely.
But I'm assuming that it's not just children that you want to help. It's the wider population. It's the whole family in the church.
Yeah, totally. Because we've got our adults who, we've got many of our adults who were saying just the difficulties and the struggles that they have, and even our older people. And stretching kind of sensory processing to a little bit. It's just looking at the kind of cups that you have. For some whose strength in their fingers is just not there, and we have these tiny little hooks to put a finger through, or the cups are too hot for them to hold, or they don't have arms on their chairs for them to sit in church. So it's looking, the same way we used to not have ramps in churches. It was just something that we never thought about. And now we wouldn't think of putting up a modern building or any building without having a ramp for someone to be able to get in with a wheelchair. And I think that's where we're at with sensory processing too. I think it'll take a while for it to drip through society and eventually out into society. But that's where, what it was for ramps and wheelchairs swings and balls and things to sit on, things to fidget with will become, I trust and I pray, will become the new norm, that there is an acceptance that actually people process information differently, and allowing them just to have a little bit of movement is not a problem. It really isn't a problem. And in fact, it should be accommodated and encouraged to help people thrive and flourish in what they're doing.
Putting my having worked in church ministry, particularly children and families ministry, I know where my brain is going as you're talking, which I think people may well be thinking, but is it really complicated to make changes to accommodate people who are struggling with sensory issues?
No, not at all. The biggest thing is not knowing what to do, not knowing what the issues are in the first place, not knowing what their sensory thumbprint is. So that's where there's a questionnaire within it to help communication, because I think communication is a massive issue. We don't know what to ask. We don't know often what to say. We often feel, especially those that I work with who do have sensory issues, they say that they won't be believed because they haven't been believed in school, or they haven't been believed by so-and-so, or they haven't been believed. So it's about trying to honour them again and just value that and validate what they are experiencing, that it is real for them. So there is a questionnaire for communication, and let's get talking. Yeah. And I'm always there, actually, once a month, just saying there's a free Zoom. If anybody actually does want to come and join me for that one, I've got a Facebook group, Christian Sensory Support. So if you want to Google that one, come find me. And then there's always a link in there if anybody wants to actually chat about church once a month. And yeah, that's posted in the group, or for those who are connected to the Christian Sensory Support webpage. Okay,
one other thing I've got to ask you today. Can you give us a real success story that can really encourage people to try and get involved with the help that you're providing, of somebody who has gone from absolutely no way, can't live life properly, to completely part of something that's going on?
Where do I start? First one, the little boy comes to mind. I do work with adults, obviously, and old folk as well, but this little boy was lovely, but just couldn't catch. So over the course of the year, wouldn't let his parents come close, didn't want to be touched, would hug on his own terms, so didn't want to be touched, nightmare dressing, bedtime, wouldn't sleep, he was in the parents' bed, and really picky eating. So we pretty well had all the different aspects of sensory processing going on with this little chap. So over the course of that year, his coordination came on leaps and bounds, and he's skateboarding, he's catching balls, he's loving life. His anxiety was huge. It was through the roof. Now it's like he has confidence to do things, and he can go out with his family and do things. His skin system is settled so that he's now able to sleep on his own, and he can wear clothes, he can get his hair cut. And what were the other things that he was doing? Picky eating. We're still working on the eating, but the amount of things that he eats, and he's so much more willing to try things. He's chewing things because he didn't have a muscle, oral motor work around his mouth, and he's chewing and trying different things, and the range of the variety of food has just really come on. And so, yeah, he's just one of many. It's every week families are changing, and that's the beauty of, that's why I love what I do.
that comes out quite clearly. Right. If anybody's got any questions, you can get in touch with us here in the studio, and we'll pass them on to you, Anne, and then we'll do questions and answers. But yeah, hello at pure247radio.org, or you can get in touch via the WhatsApp. Both links are at the bottom of the website. Click on those. It will take you to the email or the WhatsApp. You can let us know your questions. I will pass them on to Anne, and we'll try and work through those one by one for you here on the Get You Home show. Thank you. I'm really enjoying this. This is so exciting. You're my first regular guest. So thank you.
I am so delighted. Honestly, I can't believe when you asked, it was just like, I would love to. I love what you do, and I love your heart, and I love what the radio is all about. Thank you.
Cool. Excellent. Right. Well, I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll move on to some more music now.